Hi guys, welcome to today's session. Drop a message in the chat if you can hear me clearly. We are going to be speaking to databases, primarily non-relational DBs, right? We're going to be talking about MongoDB, but I'll first, give a background knowledge as to what databases are. Working with databases, right? So basically, speak to that first before we dive into um, discussing MongoDB. Okay. Yeah. So just to make sure everyone, just to make sure we are aligned on that, and to make sure you guys can hear me as well, drop a message in the chat, please. If you can hear me clearly, drop a message in the chat. Oh, okay. Okay, I can see messages now. I think I wasn't seeing this earlier. All right. Nice. So, oh, I see. I'm not even sharing my screen just yet. Give me a second. Give me a second to do that. All right. Share my screen. Entire window correct. Okay. All right. So here we go. Let's take these guys off. Take it off. Take it off. What do we have on this page? All right. Some of the things we looked at in the last class, right? Put this here. Okay. So of course, I mentioned earlier that we'll be speaking to MongoDB, right, which is no SQL. That's what we call it, right? So I'm not going to spend so much time talking about theoretical stuffs, right? I don't want to waste our time, of course. But there are some basic things I think we should know. Um, some types of databases, right? And of course, what exactly, when we say database, what exactly do we mean, right? What's a database? I'll first give you like a simple scenario here. You have your users trying to use your application. Okay, so you have users trying to use your application, and then you have your backend and your front end application. So let's call this our UI, right? In bracket front end, and let's call it our API, right? API. Okay, in bracket we'll call this the backend. All right, so when the user is communicating with the front end, which is basically what you have on your web browser, let's assume the user says, okay, I want to create an account and I put in my username and password. That is sent to our API, which is sitting on the backend. And then our API needs to save that record if the record doesn't exist, right? So you have a check that says, if it doesn't exist, right? So record, if record doesn't exist, now this is looking terrible, but yeah, can adjust that. Okay, so if the record doesn't exist, you want to save this in your database, right? So you just have this simple flow. If the record doesn't exist, let's proceed to save that in our DB, and we'll call this our database. Database. So we are assuming here that what we are using is NoSQL, right? So what we're using here is NoSQL, and yeah, so DB, let's just call it DB, NoSQL or non-relational. So let's just say NoSQL, that's fine. So what do we mean by non-relational, and what do we also mean by relational? Because if we are saying non-relational, it means we'll probably have relational databases as well. So we're going to look at relational databases later when we talk about Postgres, right? Well, try to look at this simple flow that I just explained here. We have the users, open like a web UI, right, where they are asked to enter email and password if they want to create a new account, right? So you see those forms where you have email, you have password, and then they probably ask you to confirm that password just to make sure the password you entered is the ideal password you want to enter. And then you click on the sign up button or something. So you sign up. Okay. So when you click on this sign up button, it probably takes you, it loads for a while. After loading for a while, it tells you, oh, sign up was successful. Check your email, right? Check your email, for the confirmation email we've sent you. Okay. The way these things work is you have been able to create your account. That account creation process, was basically sitting on. I would say it was basically sitting on the back end, right? And then the back end basically connects to a database. Okay, so the database is where you actually get to store all those records. Okay, so when you store the record in a database, it means you probably have this sitting as a new record. So we can call this, say we have a unique, what we call a unique ID. That ID can be, a random number, right? But it's unique. And then we have the person's email, right? Can be me at solomonmav.com. We have the password. So of course, for anything that has to do with passwords, you probably want to hash that password. So you have that password hashed, right? And then you also have some records like the date it was created, the date that credential was updated, right? And stuff like that. If the account is active, right? You can say status, account status, active, or let's say inactive, for example. That can be a default value you save in database as well, because you probably want to use that to track if this person has enabled or activated that account by clicking on the email you sent them. Okay, so you can also have OTP where you can store OTP values if you are sending OTP for some sort of verification, right? um Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that it's a good idea to understand how some of these things are saved. The database is basically that engine that saves these records, right? If you create a new record, you're going to have a new record stored in your DB, right? If it's a relational database, it stores these items in columns, right? It stores these items in columns, and the best way to describe this is, in a tabular form, right? So say you have tables. Let's just assume this is a table. The way relational database will store this record is you basically have different, records like this. Now, this is just an example, by the way, right? So you have different fields. You have your ID field, you have your username, right, or your email, you have your password, you have, status, and the rest, right? You have these items created in columns this way, so that when people enter, when they create a new record, you have it structured, in rows, right? You have them arranged in rows. You have the unique ID, the email, the password, the status, and all this other set of records. And that is how they would all be stored in rows. You can simply query, you can search for items, right? You can also create multiple tables and set up, connections, what we call relationships, right? So you can have multiple tables, and you can basically set up relationships across the tables. Okay, I'm going to show you an example of what that would look like, right? I'll show you an example of what that would look like. Um, but we are simply going to focus mostly on Postgres for now. So this is Postgres. We're going to focus on MongoDB. Sorry, I just want to show you an example of what this would look like. So let's just check it out. I'm running my Postgres engine right now, and I'm just going to show you an example. Let's see. I should have a new connection to my local DB. So local hosts, let's just say local host 54. Okay, let's test that. Okay, connect. Okay. So yeah, if I should check my local tables, you see I have a bunch of tables. I have one I call sample. All right, and this is the table I created. So you see the way this data is arranged, right? This is a sample of how your relational database records are stored, right? You see it is actually stored in a tabular form. You can have multiple tables here, and then you set up relationships, right? When we get to talk about relational DBs in detail, you would get to understand it even better, right? Um, for non-relational databases, you don't store the records in columns like this. We have different types of databases. I'm just speaking to relational and non-relational. We even have more. We have graph databases, right? We have more, but we're just focusing on these ones for now. When you learn about this very well, you would get to also easily jump on the others and find it easy going, right? So for non-relational databases, you have these items stored as documents, right? So what you have is what we call collections. So in place of what you have here for relational databases that we call tables, right? This is for relational. So this is for non-relational. Okay. So right here we have tables, and in place of tables here we would call them collections, right? So if you call this like a user table, for example, if this is a user table, for example, in your non-relational user table, for the non-relational entry here, you call this the user collection. What am I writing? What am I writing? Okay, so you have the user collection, right? And then what you basically call records, okay, or rows. Right here, these are simply what you call documents. Okay, so if you have a collection, I'll show you an example. Say we have a user collection. Within the user collection, you would have all the documents in here. So you can have like maybe user one. All right, let's put that, let's put it this way. Okay, so you have like two blocks, for example. All right, so in here you have like ID. It's kind of difficult to keep up with this. So ID, we have one, we have username, we have hello one, we have password, we have hashed password one, just like this. And then here you have ID two. Okay, so now these are basically stored as documents, right? So this is a document. Okay, this is another document. All right, let's just copy this comma here. Okay, so now you have one document in here. Right here you have another document, and they are all sitting inside a collection, right? So it's mostly structured as JSON. The way you're seeing it is mostly structured as it's mostly structured in form of JSON, right? With the same shape, right? That JSON object, but this is not JSON, right? This is not JSON, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so yeah, so in here you have documents. Just trying to show you the equivalent. Okay, so here you have columns. So columns are basically each of these section, right? ID column, email column, password column, and status column. So right here you have fields. So here you basically have columns just like this, right? Here you basically have, we can call them fields, right, in place of that, because the amazing thing, the major difference, I'll tell you, right, which I also think is amazing for working with non-relational. I mean, it depends. See, these things have their trade-offs, right? There are some applications you build and non-relational looks like the best option, right? um and there are some other applications to build, relational would be the best option. If you're building like financial applications, it's most likely you're going with relational DBs, right? If you're building maybe commerce or some other kind of applications, you find most people doing using non-relational databases like MongoDB. I mean, it works, it excels in such space. Movie applications where you simply have different movies with different categories, and then you're able to structure, several documents inside those respective categories. This might be a good option, right? For financial applications, because you don't want a situation where records are not kept with the same schema, right? Relational databases would always be, would most likely, right, be the best option. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is that for relational database, there's something we call ACID, right? So it is we call it we call it acid. And basically what this is trying to say is that you are not expecting to say you are trying to create a new record, and that record actually fails to create. So long the execution starts, it has to complete, right? Of course there are some things that comes into play, deadlocks and the rest of them. When we get to dive so deep into this, I would explain this in detail, right? For non-relational databases, this can you can basically store records with different shapes. So what do I mean by that? For the first example here, if you take a look at this, we're able to store this record. We can under the same collection, we can store another record that is not exactly the same shape. So this record might not contain OTP, and that will work, right? That will work as well. it might not contain status, and this will be saved, right, as well. But for the relational database, when you have set that, this is the specification I'm trying to follow, you cannot create a new record that does not have that particular field, right? Of course, if that particular field is set not to be important, then what would happen in such a scenario if it's a relational DB is that the column will be there, but then these guys will be basically empty, right? So the items, it will just be empty, but the column remains there. Okay. So this is what you get in a relational DB. Okay, when you have multiple records and some of those records are optional, it still maintains that column, saying that you can come back and update it when you want to. But for non-relational, this is for relational, by the way. For non-relational, you can simply choose to take this off without saving it in the first place, and this you can actually get to save this. Okay. Yeah, so it's very flexible to work with, which is a good thing, but also can be a bad thing if you're not very careful with it, right? Okay, so these are just basic explanations on things you should note down. We are going to be showing some practical examples of how these things work. Okay, if you have any questions based on this little explanation, go ahead and ask that question before I jump into showing actual example on using um, MongoDB. So we're going to understand what MongoDB is, and I will just do some quick demo on how to work with MongoDB. We'll start off with the installation, by the way, right? And then I will show you how to use it. Okay. So let's just go to mongodb.com. If you have any questions, I am looking at the chat. I can't see any questions yet. If there are any questions, you can drop it in the chat. Okay, so I don't think we have any questions. Now, MongoDB is a non-relational DB, right? It's a NoSQL DB. And yeah, so it's basically, this is the website, right? You can simply visit the website here, mongodb.com, right? If you visit mongodb.com, of course, you can decide to use the the cloud version of MongoDB, right? Where you can simply create an environment, set up your database and connect to that database. Or you can also choose to install this on your machine, okay? So you see we have examples on how, you can use MongoDB with JavaScript, Python, Java, C Sharp. It's pretty simple to use, right? It's pretty easy and straightforward to use. Um, what we are going to do, right now is, let's see. Okay. What we're going to do right now is, look at how we can install MongoDB. By the way, you can check out, some of the documentations as well, right? You can actually check out the courses they have and their certifications. You can check out some of their webinars and events. When you click on these pages, these links, it takes you to pages where you can simply learn from, right? You can also get to see resources you can work with. We'll talk about what Compass is, right? Basically, it's a GUI tool, but we'll get to look at it. I have the application installed right here, MongoDB Compass, and you can install it as well for your own development, right? So you see, you can sign up for MongoDB Atlas, right? Atlas is the cloud option, right? The cloud offering of MongoDB, right? You can also use the community. This is the community version, which basically you can use, right? You can download and use it on your machine, right? We also have the enterprise version, but of course you have to stick to this for now. So you can click on this to download. You can also click on this to see, basically to get to that environment or that web page where you see details about, about the community version. Okay. Yeah. So what you can do is basically click on download. So when I click on download, this takes me to the yeah, this takes me to the download page. So this is the download page. So this is where you basically see the commands you can use to download this. If you take a look at this, you see I have brew install MongoDB Atlas. This is if you're trying to set up. Oh, this if you're trying to set up like the Atlas version offline, but that's not what I'm looking for. Basically, let me see. Um, okay, fully managed service, blah blah blah. Okay, now this is not exactly what I'm looking for. Hmm. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to type MongoDB download Windows. I think maybe it is trying to just show me the option for Windows, but let me click on this. Let's see where it takes us to. MongoDB community server download. This is still good. Okay, yeah, maybe I can change. Aha, okay, all right, I can change this. Let's go for Windows x64 here, right? So you see, I have the MSI package and of course the current version, right? This is the current version. So the MSI package will have the zip package, but you can simply click on, Windows 64. If you are using Ubuntu, you can also click on your specific distribution and version here, right? So if I click on Windows, I can just click on download, and this will basically download that MSI version that I can install, right? You see, this is 577 megabytes, right? So I can simply download that and start using it. Let me cancel that download for now. Okay, so if you're using a Mac, right, you can simply say brew install, right? Or you can also decide to click on, let's see, you should be able to click on Mac OS, ARM right here, Mac OS x64, and click on this, and I get to download the TGZ package before I perform installation after downloading that, or I can just go with, the brew command. Yeah, so there is a different command you can also use to install this. I think I should probably check. Let's go back. Let's just go back. It seems like I just hope that page is still there. So you can basically install this if you're on a Mac or Ubuntu, which is basically Debian distribution. You can let's just search for this again. Mongo DB Community Edition. Down install Ubuntu command. Okay, so I know most of you are already familiar with the sudo apt command thing, right? So you can simply perform MongoDB installation, using this option as well. If you are a Linux user, right? Sudo apt-get install gnup. This is basically to get call installed, and after having call installed, you use this to import the MongoDB public GPG key, right? So you run this, and then after running that, you can simply, if you are running Ubuntu 22 or Ubuntu 20, you see you have the command for both of them, right? So you can simply run this, okay? So after running this, you run this again to update. These are different commands. And after performing that update, adding the key and, adding the release candidate, I believe, right? You can then proceed to install, right? So you see sudo apt-get install -y mongodb org, right? So if you run this command on Ubuntu, right? I keep saying Ubuntu, but of course, Debian distribution, this would install MongoDB on your machine, right? If you think this is probably too much work, then you can go with the other option where you simply have to download the package and perform that installation directly. All right, so if you have done that installation, when you type Mongosh, right? Mongosh, Mongosh, or you just use think Mongod, right? This basically, okay, I think I have an error somewhere here, I believe. Let's do Mongosh instead. So this would basically, take you into the environment where you can start working with your database, right? Of course, you can simply connect this, to your JavaScript code as well, right? You see, we have the connection string here. We'll get to do that as well. But just to show you that this is installed, it takes you into like your the repo where you can start, typing commands, right? So I can say show DBs, and you see it to show me some of the databases I have created. These are examples. Okay, if I say use link shortener, you see it says switch to DB link shortener. So if I say show collections, it shows me the collections I have created within that that link shortener database, right? And if I say maybe links dots, yeah, so I think I can just, I'm going to show these commands again, basically, right? But you can simply just say links dot, no, I think I should say that is not correct. Okay, so it should be, give me a second. It should be db.links, right? It should be db.links, that is the name of the collection. Then I can say dot find, find. Okay, so that gives me all the links that I have created. You see, I have all those links within a single collection here, right? It's a lot basically. I stored a bunch of things alongside the links, right? You see, I have a bunch of records in here, right? A lot of records. So some of the link shorteners, some of the links that I've shortened, right? Basically have some of the records in here, but no issues. Let's not spend too much time there. I'm going to, show you how this works again. If you have performed that installation already, just type, Mongosh, and it takes you straight into the repo where you can start, type using the commands, right? We're going to take those commands one after the other. I've also created a documentation that I will share with you for the commands, right? Kind of like a cheat sheet, okay? If you're done installing this, remember I mentioned that you can also install Compass, which is a GUI tool that you can use to access and work with your MongoDB database, okay? So it's GUI for MongoDB. You can simply click on download now. When you have visited this page, you can click on download now. It's going to give you a GUI tool that you can simply use to work and manage your databases. If you are a fan of working with GUIs, then yes, this is going to be a nice one for you. So if I simply click on MongoDB Compass, I already have this installed, as you can see. If I click on this now, it's going to open up the GUI interface that I can start working with, right? So let's give that a second to load. All right, so now you see I have this, opened up, and one second, yeah. So I have MongoDB Compass, loaded here. I have some of I have some of my databases I've accessed before right here. So this is basically showing me my local URL, and of course, I can, connect to that particular database, which is, running on my laptop. So if I click on connect, it's simply connecting to my, yeah, it has connected to my database, and it shows me, um, it has connected to my local instance, and it's showing me all my, databases I've created, right? So I have my database, the link shortener that we just saw right now. If I click on the link shortener, it shows me the collections. These are the collections, client collection, right? And as you can see, I can even create a new collection, okay? So we have the client collection, the links collection. If I click on the links collection here, it shows me those records, right? Those records we were exploring just now. It shows me those records in here, okay? And of course, I can even edit those records directly. So you see, when I try to edit, it's asking me edit documents, right? So it's asking me if I really want to edit the document because this is a document, okay? Each of these options here are fields, right? If you don't have delete, if you don't have date updated here and you have it here, it will still save that record. So, what we tend to practice at times is make sure we have a defined schema on our application end, right? But then that means leaving that workload on the application, to decide what goes in or goes out of your DB, right? As opposed to uh, the relational type where you simply have those fields or those columns created already, okay? Anyways, the point is you are able to see how this works using MongoDB Compass. So go ahead and download MongoDB Compass, install MongoDB on your machine, connect to the local instance you have by simply using this URL. You see here, localhost 27017. That will probably be the default thing you see on your end as well, right? If you have that opened up, you can simply put in this URL and connect to your local database, all right, or your local instance. Of course, we also have a terminal here, so you can simply, perform those. You see, when I say show databases, show collections, show DBs, right? You see, I have some of those commands, so it will be a good way to also, help you learn if you use the terminal from here. So if I say show DBs, if I say use um, my database, right? If I say show collections, okay. Okay, so we don't really have anything in here. Show collections. Okay, let's just go back then. I'll say show DBs again, right? I'll say use link shortener. Okay, I keep trying to use ls, that's wrong. Show collections. All right, I can say db.clients. Okay, so if I say db.clients.find, right? That, since I don't specify any specific thing, it's just going to give me the clients, right? You see, I have like a client record I created in here, but that was just an example, by the way. All right, so let's leave this for now. The same terminal, you can simply use it straight on your terminal here. Whether you are on Windows, you can use PowerShell, or you can use Git Bash, right, or any other terminal or command line environment that you can use, even command prompt. Okay, so now we have this. This is the repo as I mentioned earlier, and this is where we can start trying out some of those commands. So what I'm going to do now is create a new basically create a new record, right? I'm going to create a new record, and I'm going to save that record in our in MongoDB, right? We're going to create a new record and save that record in MongoDB. All right. So yeah, let's go. In order to create a new database, you don't necessarily need to you don't need to explicitly say you're trying to create a database. Okay. You can just start by saying use let's just call this new DB. Okay. So now you see it says switch to new DB. We didn't say we're creating new DB. Of course, I don't have an existing DB called new DB, but by saying use new DB, it automatically switches to that context. And if you are able to create just one record, right? Once you create just one record, that DB automatically begins to exist, right? So if I say DB dot I can start by automatically I can just formulate something here, right? I can call this maybe customers, right? So if I say db.customers.insert one, that was a mistake, insert one, okay, and I just put in the record here. What I usually prefer to do is have that record first in a blank space here, right? So maybe I want to create a record that would look like this. I want to say we have an ID of one. We have yeah, we have like a username, or let's just say a customer name of Mav John, and then we have like a customer address of like Lekki, let's just say Lekki, Lagos, right? And then what else do I need? Oh yeah, this is fine. So what I can simply do is copy this, right? Come back here, paste it in here, and now I just hit enter. It tells me the record is acknowledged, right? So acknowledge true, inserted ID. So we have that object ID. So this object ID is created for every record that we create here. And yeah, just because I have inserted a new record, if I say show collections now, that's an error, collections, okay. Now you see we have customers, right? From the fact that I created a record under customers. So now we have a new collection, and I can simply say db.customers.find, right? It gives me the record I have created. Okay. So you see we have within a collection, we have different documents. This is the first document I just created. If I go ahead to create a new record here, I can say John Mac, right? And I can say this guy lives in Keja, for example. Okay. So if I come back here, copy this again, and I say, db.customers.insert one, right? If I paste this in here, it's going to create a new record, acknowledge true. So I can say db.customers.find, and I get to see the records I have in my DB. Okay. If I also pull up Compass, just to have you verify this as well. So if I go to connect, and I simply click on new DB that we just created, you see we have the customers collection. I can click on that, and you see the records we just created. Of course, you can get to view this record. We have different views here, right? Okay. So, but let's just work with the default. So these are the two records that we just created. Unfortunately, ID still remains one because we made a mistake there. We should have incremented it from our end. Nonetheless, this is the unique object ID for that record, right? It is unique. So you can simply use that to also search for items. Okay. What we have done right now is to simply create a DB, create a collection, and also insert an item into that collection just from the little actions that you saw me use. We can also get to updates, right? So we can actually update, by adding something, additional, right? So this is what I'm going to do. If I should come back to this record here, I can simply say I want to update a particular record, but I want to make these records even more unique, right? So I would start off by deleting the record from here. So let's just click on delete. Okay. So I'll delete all the items in here. If I delete all the items in here, now you see we don't have any record. If I come back to the terminal and I simply say db.customers.find, you see it doesn't give me any feedback. I don't have any record. Okay. Now I want to add email to this set of records. So I'll simply include email. Let's bring that to the top here. Okay, so I would say me at john.com, right? Okay, so I have an email record here. Now let's say db.customers.insert one. Okay, of course. So if I say insert one, it means we can also insert many, right? We have .insert one. We can also have insert many. Okay, so insert many, you have to put more objects and you can create all at the same time. All right, so now if I say customers, sorry, db.customers.find, you see I have the record I just created. Let's create a new one and I would say sarah.com, Control C. This would be John. Sarah, this would be Yaba, Lagos. So now let's create a new record. I'll say db.customers.insert one. Okay. Oh, there's an error there. Let's close that to the bracket. So now we have created that record. So if I say db.customers, db.customers.find. So now you see we have two records, but now we actually want to find, a particular record, right? So I can simply say that record would contain an email of, yeah, so I can say it contains an email of me at sarah.com, right? Just like this. So you see, it was able to get that particular record. Of course, we have two records, but I was more specific with the search, value that I put in here, and it gave me that particular record with that unique value. Okay, hope that makes sense, guys. Right? So of course, I can search with ID, email, customer name, customer address. Right? If I simply come in here and I say, let us search with yeah, so let's just say customer name. Okay, now for the customer name, if I put John Mark, so you see we're able to get that record for John Mark, right? I was able to search with the customer name. Okay, so yes, you can also perform update action, right? You can perform update action, you can perform delete action, you can perform basically what we call uh, um, yeah, what's that name again? So update action, delete action. We've done the insert. Okay, so I think insert menu. I was about to mention insert menu. So let's check out insert menu. So I have one record. I'm going to have another record. But let us change some of these things a bit. So this time I'm going to say me at jerry.com. So I have Jerry, Jerry Jones, right? Let's call this maybe where first stack. That is how it's spelled. Okay, so this is ID of maybe 3. Let's call this guy ID of 3, and this should be 4. Okay, so let's just copy this, paste it in here. All right, so now this will be Jones. So this will be Jones, Jones, Mav. Okay, and probably this guy lives at Ilupeju. Okay, all right, so this is the record I want to save, right, in my DB. So what I'm going to do is db.customers.insert menu, right? I told you we also add insert menu. So if I put in insert menu, I can paste multiple items. So now it says docs must be an array of documents. So yeah, so it must be an array of documents, and that was the mistake I made. It should be an array of documents, so it should look like this. Okay, so let's copy that again. I would say db.customers.insert menu, paste that in there, and now you see we have acknowledged true and the records were inserted. So if I say db.customers.find, right, I get all the records, right? The first two records were created and the last two records were just created. So we're able to insert one, we're able to insert many. All right. Okay. So We have seen how you can perform search as well with find, right? And the next thing I want to show you is how to update. So let's say we want to update this particular record with ID of 4, right? Here's what we want to update. So what we're going to do right now is to say, I want us to perform an update action, where, sorry, okay. So where we are going to say, we're simply going to say, first the item we're looking for, has an ID of 4, right? And then second, we're now going to say we'll set this new value, right? So we'll simply say maybe like age, or let's just say we'll set email to be me or them at, okay, I think them, what's going by them? People at jones.com. So initially it was, me at jones.com, but now I'm changing it to people at jones.com for that particular record, by the way, right? It's for that specific record. Okay. Now remember that you're going to have to put this, within your brackets, just like this. All right, let's see if I'm missing anything here. I said 1, 2, so yes, we need a third item here, just like this. So it's basically 3 items. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. The first thing here is, your search key, right, and value. We basically use this to search for the record we want to update, and then we use the set keyword to specify that we're trying to set the value of email to this, right? So what I can do is go back to the terminal, and I can start by saying, db.customers, right, dot update one. Okay, we're trying to update one record. Okay, so if I say, you see, when I press tab twice, I get the options here: update one, right, update search index, update menu. Okay, so if I say update one, I can now go ahead and paste that particular command, right? So let's just paste. I think there's an error because I should update one. Okay, so I should not put the bracket. I already have a bracket copied. So now we have an error. It says I have multiple of this. Let's verify the error here. So we have the first item. Okay, that's correct. So we have 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Okay, I have a third item. I should take off then. All right, so let's try this again. db.customers updates one. I can paste this, and it says acknowledge true, inserted ID, match count one, modified count one. So if I now say db.customers.find, right, and let's say I decide to find the item with ID of 4, right, just like this. You see it has changed from me at jones.com to people at jones.com, right? So this is how we are currently working with our database. And of course, if we refresh this page here, we can also get to see that information. So we can refresh by clicking on this right here. And click on this and you see we have those information, right? People at jones.com. So yes, this is basically how to perform, this set of actions. To delete a record, I can also specify that I want to delete a record with this email, people at jones.com, right? So I can simply go to our terminal right here, and I can say db.customers.delete, right? So when I say I want to delete, I have to specify delete one or delete many. So when I say delete one, I want to delete a record with email with this specific information. So let me just copy it, paste it here, and close that command. So now it says acknowledge true, delete count one, deleted count one. So if I say db.customers.find, again, you see that we no longer have that particular record where we have people at Jones, people at, what was that again? Let me see. I think people at jones.com. Yeah. So we no longer have that record on this list. So this is how you perform, creating a record, updating a record, deleting a record, and fetching those records with MongoDB. Okay. We are not using this yet with JavaScript. We're going to do that in tomorrow's class, where I will get to show you most of those details on how to basically incorporate MongoDB into your application. Right. This class is going to be kept simple. I want you guys to go back, watch this video and revise some of these things so that you are able to understand how to work with this set of actions. By tomorrow's class, we're going to now, dive into using MongoDB in our application and building a simple application, running on MongoDB as the database, layer. Okay. So I hope this was not so confusing for you. Let me check the chat. Is it possible to set constraints with this? Well, I mean, this is not like your relational DBs, right? So the best way you can actually set some of those things is, on the application layer. So when we are doing this with JavaScript, I'll show you how to use a library called Mongoose to specify some of those constraints. Okay. For Tayo, I'll show you how to do that using Mongoose. Okay. You can't actually do most of those things on a database level. You can only do it within your application code. All right. Yes, 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 of course. The thing is, your object ID is always unique, right? Your object ID is always going to be unique. But say you want to set like, email should be unique and stuff, if that's what you mean. I would show you how to specify that on your application level, right? You can't really do most of those checks on the database level, but I get your point. Setting, unique, not null, and the rest of them. You don't really do those things in, document DB, right? But your object ID, this is your ID right here. So let's forget about this ID. You always have an ID when you create a record. Okay. So we'll see how that is done and how most of those things like constraints, will be handled on the application layer using libraries like Mongoose, right? If you're working with JavaScript or TypeScript, and some other libraries like PyMongo if you're working with Python. But we'll focus on JavaScript tomorrow. So yes, I'll be expecting you to join in early so we can cover building our application tomorrow. So do well to join on time. Have a wonderful evening, guys. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.